He's a mega giant.
All right, here we go. Deer season 24. We're bringing you another Heartbreak series, a giant Iowa deer, wide, drop tine. Matt has a great encounter with him. Here we go.
You know, years ago, we had a buck that we called Heart Attack. And I know this is part of the Heartbreaker series, but when I think of this deer and the story we're about to tell, I think back to Heart Attack because of the width of this deer. Just how big he was, the way he wore that frame. And man, he gives me a heart attack every time I saw his trail pictures, every time I saw a video of him. I never saw the deer in person, and I think really Scott and Matt were the only two that saw this deer in person. But here's a story of a deer that would give you a heart attack and ultimately broke our hearts.
Another giant deer that we had our sights highly set on. This deer, we didn't have a lot of pictures of this particular deer. He was kind of on the edge of our farm, but it was one that we wanted to target and put high on the priority list.
Here's a deer that is elusive, a giant wide Iowa buck that we have struggled to run into. He lives on a big open farm, a big farm that has tree lines and a lot of tillable on it, and he's a deer that we just can't hone in on. No matter where our cameras are, no matter where our stand locations are, it's a deer that we cannot figure out which draw he's gonna come down and at what time.
Summer of 2022, very wide open farm. There's just a few draws running in through it. And it's one of those farms that we get a lot of good pictures in, but I think it's kind of a fringe area because there's not a lot of heavy cover on it. It used to be CRP, it used to have heavy cover, but they pulled it out of CRP and took it to tillable. And that changed the DNA of the farm, if you will. And I think that's a lesson to be learned with this particular story. Here's a buck that perhaps if it was still in CRP, still in heavy cover, we might have had a better chance at him because there was more bedding out on this farm then. Right now, it's tillable. Once the crops come out, there's little to no bedding. We had pictures of him in the summer, and just a giant buck. We didn't know who he was. He looked fully mature, but it was one of those bucks that just showed up. Where did he come from? Why did he change home ranges? That's one of the things that always intrigues me. How do you not know who this deer was? Because his frame is unmistakable, yet we had no prior history with him.
We knew the particular farm that he was on was a wide open farm, had lots of draws, lots of crops. So we had a few spots to hunt him in, but the deer could be anywhere on this particular farm. We didn't know exactly where this deer was going to show up, but we wanted to go back into the area where we had our cameras, where we were getting summer photos of him, and start there.
Great pictures in the summer, and then fast forward to mid-October, a really good cold front, a northeast wind. Matt's in camp, he and Scott are going in, and they had one heck of an encounter with a buck that will give you a heart attack.
All right, so first morning hunt of the year, and here it is, 6:11. We got a little bit of time before daylight. Let's see what time it starts here. Sunrise is 7:17. So we do gotta get our butts moving. It's always interesting to hunt somebody else's stuff and not really know where the spots are. DeerCast is saying great this morning. We got a extremely high barometric pressure. The moon set pretty early this morning, so we're going in pretty much cover of darkness here. Couple really big deer on this piece, so excited to see what we see. Let's go. All right, 7 o'clock. We got a great day ahead of us here. High pressure, we're at 30.46 right now. Straight north wind, really down here in this little draw. It doesn't feel like we have any wind. There's a couple really big deer that he's got us in here after. I'm looking forward to seeing what we'll have in store for us. Let's do the wind check real quick. Dead on. Hopefully we have a good hunt in store for us this morning. If not, always feels good to wake up with the woods. a little brisk this morning. Had to wear a couple extra layers of scent lock. beautiful footage. Big deer. Giant mass. Spaces were incredible. We had these does all around us. We had 7 does right here underneath us. And when I went to reach for my bow, they kind of bounded out but they didn't blow. Pressure's going straight up, thermal straight up. Never got us. And he came down, he was coming down, and he got to about 46, and that didn't bother him. He just kept coming. And the closest he got was 46. He kind of turned around and he went up that hillside. There were some scrapes up there, I think. I had him at quartering away at 46, but it's so calm, and that's not a comfortable shot for me anyway, so it didn't enter my mind to ever actually shoot at him. And you just hope that one of the guys gets an opportunity at that deer this fall. It was a giant. We still have a couple does out here around us. Sit tight here and hopefully we see something else, but my guess is that was the flurry going back to bed. Incredible.
All right, so close. And one of those instances where there's no wind, so therefore you really can't get by with anything. And Matt, just unbeknownst to him, he's focused on the big buck coming. There's a doe underneath him looking at him, and just that little bit turned that mature deer and ended up not getting a shot, and it's just bad luck, really. Well, the season progresses. We continue to hunt that deer out of that stand when the wind was right. We got a few more pictures of him, not a lot, and no more sightings, but we tried.
So the 2022 season rolls on. We hunted hard for this deer. We got hooked. When Matt encountered this deer, he brought the footage back. We knew we had to get on this farm and hunt this deer as much as we possibly could. And unfortunately, as 2022 season comes and goes, an awesome encounter by Matt, but just an awesome deer to look forward to in the 2023 season.
After the encounter Scott and Matt had in the tree stand, this deer was alive and well through the end of the season, through shed season. We did not come up with his sheds, but he was alive. He would be on trail camera spotty. You know, every 3 days you'd get him, then he'd be gone. It was just a really hard deer to run into.
All right, so Wade nicknames this deer Matty Cakes because he got so close. Matt had a great encounter with him. That's a name that's gonna stick, right? Matty Cakes. Well, summer rolls around, we get pictures of this deer, fantastic pictures. He's a mega giant, and we're like, man, we're fired up. #1 target as far as we were concerned. Giant buck.
You know, with our excitement levels high, this deer is high on the hit list, and we're excited for this season to chase this particular deer.
He's an absolute giant, as big as ever. And it was a deer we really were trying to hone in on. You know, I hunted there early, muzzleloader season.
We start to hunt him. We're waiting for the right wind, right conditions. We actually hung a new set. We had a new blind on another part of the farm, trying to hunt these fingers, trying to run into this giant deer. We put up different cameras, trying to intercept him.
And just never could hone in on this deer. He showed up for a few days, and then he was gone for a week. You know, he'd come back for a day or two and then be gone for 2 weeks. He just wasn't consistent at all, and a very hard deer to run into just because of the farm that he lived on. If he wasn't there, there wasn't really anything else there.
Ellie hunted there with a bow. We hunted there late season with a muzzleloader. We just could not run into this deer, and we could not figure out where he was going and where he was coming from. This was a deer that would be on camera 3 days in a row, and then he would be gone for a while, and then he'd show back up. So he was a very hard deer to run into.
But something was unfolding as we were going through the season. The story that we were putting together was two things. #1, he wasn't moving a lot during daylight. #2, he just wasn't on that farm very often. I talk about how it used to be in CRP and now it's tillable. When we'd catch him of a morning coming back out of there, but access was difficult because it was so wide open. And he just wasn't in there very often. I think sometimes when you are on the fringe of a deer's home core and he's not betting on you, you can expect that type of sporadic chance to actually see him. Pictures are one thing, seeing him's another. We had great pictures that year. We tried, we hunted it smart. We had great encounters with other deer, but we just could not run into Matty Cakes. And then all of a sudden, mid-November, he just vanished. And we were like, all right, what happened? And this story continues to reoccur. If you look at the Heartbreaker series we've been putting out, we feared what we would find in March. And what do you know? Guess who shows up? Not in the way you want to find him. That buck that gave us so many heart attacks every time we looked at those pictures of that footage that Matt and Scott had, there he is laying dead. We finally get to see him in person, but not the way you want to find him. Just a giant Iowa whitetail and a real heartbreaker.
Another one bites the dust.
Another heartbreaker, even bigger one. The deer we knew well. We called him Matty Cakes because Matt encountered him last fall.
It looked almost the
yeah,
same.
very, very similar deer. Matt and Scott were hunting up here in Iowa with us and encountered him, didn't get him killed. And we had a lot of camera history, trail photos of this year, and but unfortunately we never ran into him trying to hunt him. But this is Matty Cakes.
What an absolute giant. Big old drop tine. Well, not a big drop tine, but it's a big frame with a drop tine.
Yeah.
Good mass. Just an absolute giant here in Iowa.
It was one of the top deer we had on camera this year.
Sure was.
Big deer.
It's never fun finding them like this. And, you know, earlier this year, all the bucks had kind of left the cameras. And late October, early November, we had one of the best years we've ever had for velvet photos.
Yeah.
And then slowly throughout the fall, they just kept falling off the charts.
Kept disappearing.
And, I think it was a bad case of EHD once again.
We'll contact the DNR and get a salvage tag on him, and he will go to his resting place.
It just stinks to find them like this, but unfortunate, fortunate way to go. But nonetheless, it closes a chapter on another giant here in Iowa. Old Matty Cakes.
Old Matty Cakes.
Well, that's the story of Matty Cakes. Kind of a unfortunate ending to this particular deer. You know, it's never the way we want it to end, but it's the way this particular one ended. We'd have much rather obviously wrapped our tag around this just magnificent whitetail here in southern Iowa, but that wasn't what Mother Nature had in store for us. But nonetheless, that is the end of Matty Cakes.
This episode of DOD TV is brought to you by Hawk, designed for those who push their limits to hunt stronger, safer, and smarter. Hunt from above. We're adding new videos every week, so make sure to click that subscribe button and check out all of our amazing content. This episode of DOD TV is brought to you by DeerCast, the most advanced deer movement predictor ever.